Hello everyone, welcome to Aptiplus. Myself Neeraj Nachiketa, Faculty of Environment and Science and Technology. I am teaching in both the centers of Aptiplus, Kolkata and Bhubaneswar, and taking these two subjects. Now in this series of important videos and discussing about content with respect to every aspect of environment which is relevant for not only UPSC exam but all other examination. One of the very important topic which is their climate change, and you all know that COP29, Conference of Parties 29, that is a Baku Climate Change Summit, was held in the month of November 2024. Now this topic is very important. Whatever are key takeaways from this conference, there UPSC can ask question, and as I said, it can be asked in any kind of competitive exam where you are preparing for the exam, including the state PCS exam. So what we are going to do in today's session right now, I will go to various aspects of COP29 Climate Change Summit. At the same time, I will also connect with the static part, that is the syllabus part. So this syllabus part which I would like to add here will really help you understand every aspect of it. So what I would like to go into this one by one. I have prepared a slide. I will be using that slide and discuss about every point which you require from the examination point of view. So let us go through it one by one, right? Now you all can see here that this event marks a kind of a event which is the kind of a culmination of efforts of past so many years in terms of fighting climate change. And this will also pave way for future climate change negotiations. India during this session had some kind of reservations. As you know that our country is a developing country and we need climate finance as well as clean technology from developed countries. So in this context, we had to negotiate, bargain to developed countries during this COP29 summit. I will also discuss those points in today's session there. But before I go into that, let us understand the main aspect of this session here. First is, what is COP? Conference of Parties. So let me go into this kind of area. See, Conference of Parties is a term which we use for conventions meeting. But at the same time, COP also represents a governing body, administrative body of the particular convention which take all key decisions. That means decisions which are very pivotal in terms of working of the convention. Now here the convention we are talking about, that is UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is a very landmark conventions brought in the Rio Earth Summit 1992. So if you look at here, COP29 and the COP part, governing body, and this is consists of 198 member countries. So 198 member countries, 197 nations plus group of countries in Europe, European Union, that comprise the COP. And from time to time, every year, they have meetings, which you get the number. Like Baku Climate Change Summit was 29th meeting of parties, what we call COP29. Then annual conferences are held, so which I have mentioned that. So Climate Change Convention, UNFCCC, as an umbrella convention, as a framework convention, right, which provide the platform for countries to discuss every aspect with respect to climate change action. So this global platform, as terms of treaty and convention, help countries to mobilize finance initiatives to fight climate change. And you all know that climate change is a big concern, and if you don't really work hard to prevent increase of temperature, then it is said that by the end of the century there will be reversible changes to Earth's climatic system, and that will have a catastrophic effect. So this thing becomes very important, and COP plays a very important role in this case because all important decisions taken by governments, that is done through COP. And in this context, the meeting of parties also become very significant. Now what I would like to add here, that this time the COP29, if you look at in this context, there's a theme also there. But again, remember that beside the theme, beside the governments coming and discussion there, we should also know from exam point of view, and is that you are not only going to appear in prelims exam but also write mains exam. So certain facts have to be remembered. So one of the very important fact which comes here, important articles of the convention. So UNFCCC, which was brought in 1992, a landmark convention, Rio Earth Summit, right, under Agenda 21, that is sustainable progress of world. In terms of that, we brought this one. So what is very important here, this article which talks about Article 4.7, it talks about developed countries' obligations to provide developing countries in terms of finance and technology. Now, what is the reason for this? Why developed countries are obliged to go for climate finance and technology? The thing is very clear. It is an industrial revolution which took place in Europe, in the Western world, America, that started emitting the greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, by burning fossil fuels. Over the past more than 200 years, this global warming situation, greenhouse effect, has happened because of the continuous emissions of carbon from that time when industrial revolution took place. So on a historical ground, developed nations, what we call in the convention as Annex 1 countries, they are responsible for this problem. So they should take the burden and help other countries like developing countries, least developed countries, in terms of getting them support through finance and also provide them cutting edge technology by which carbon emissions can be reduced, what we call mitigation and adaptation. So that is clearly mentioned in the convention. But the problem with the convention is that it is not that much of binding in nature. It's a framework convention. So whenever a convention is framework, in order to make bindingness, under the convention there is a provision of protocol. What is a protocol? Legally binding agreement where the government again sign, join and take decision there. So that is what Kyoto Protocol. What is there? Kyoto Protocol, Japan, 1997, where the targets were given to advanced, industrialized, developed nations, what we call as the Annex 1 countries, to cut down the emissions, but not the developing countries. But again, Paris Agreement, 2015, COP21, also brought developing countries together with developed countries to cut down the emissions according to NDC, nationally determined contributions. We'll see in the coming lectures part of the slide here. So again, Paris Agreement, a landmark deal, right, COP21. Now under Paris Agreement, there is an Article 9.1, which says that, again, climate finance, that developed countries are required to mobilize climate finance to developing countries. So both convention as well as agreement ask Annex 1 countries to provide finance and technology support to non-Annex 1 countries, developing countries. That is what is the part of this. Now going for the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a UN body, right? And you all know that IPCC comes out with the climate change assessment report in a gap of 5 to 6 years. Now the sixth cycle, the sixth report has been brought by the IPCC. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a leading global authority which conduct all type of research on climate change and the impacts of climate change. It also come out with the mitigation adaptation strategies, and from time to time it provide a very useful reports to governments, policymakers to take decisions. So in this context, what I would like to bring here, the physical science basis, that is the first IPCC report brought in 2021. It basically talks about that critical climate activators, that if we really have to be seriously looking to cut down the temperature, so we have to work on the technology front. And the particularly renewable energy, clean energy is a very, very important there. Next thing what comes here, anthropogenic emission. What IPCC is saying that if you look at right now, average mean temperature of Earth's surface has already reached 1.1 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial level. Now IPCC is warning that if temperature goes beyond 2 degrees Celsius, there will be irreversible changes, right? And a lot of impacts will be felt. And it's being seen right now. Every year is warmer than the previous year. If you look at the past records, last 10 years, continuous there is an increase of temperature. Winter time frame is getting reduced, summer is becoming more, and even the winter is getting warmer, right? So if you look at in this case climatic financing in UPSC, this part again Article 4.7 of the UPSC, which I've already mentioned. Paris Agreement Article 9.1 I've already mentioned. 6th report which has already been brought. Now if you look at this report here, so it is very important to understand that the impacts like global sea level rise, heat wave is a big concern. You know, now recently wildfire, California fire, right, Los Angeles fire, right, all these fire incidents, just a few years back, Australian bush fire, all these are taking place. Extreme weather events that has becoming more and more extreme. Islands are getting submerged, sea level rise, cyclonic events, their frequency, their impacts, biodiversity loss, coral bleaching, right, changes in the pattern of migration of birds, aquatic animals, right, even health impacts, agriculture impact, food impact. Many problems are still right now being felt, and with the increase of temperature is going to be more drastic. Now if you look at key details of COP29, the first thing is Azerbaijan, Baku, where the summit was held. Date was November 11 till 22, 2024. Theme, I said that I will be coming to this. Theme was very important theme, investing in a livable planet for all. Investing in a livable planet for all. Even this can be a direct question in kind of a GK type question in other competitive exams. Then it was held in Baku Olympic Stadium. Because this event requires large gathering, not only government representatives, even the non-government organization, civil society, indigenous people, their representatives, corporates, they all assembled together. So it was held in Baku Olympic Stadium, right? This event was there. Now going for the focus area, which you will use in your answer writing part. That is the first thing which I said, climate finance. It is there for the last few COPs. So climate finance mobilization, right? I will be giving you the figure how much money has been committed by government this time. Advancing renewable energy, I have said clean energy, we have to advance. Again, efforts have been made for solar power, right, over the last few years. You know the International Solar Alliance, ISA, 2015, India and France, COP21. Now there is a One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative. Then again followed by what is something called global, right, this green initiative in COP26 Glasgow summit. So all renewable energy is a buzzword. Now again, global adaptation strategies for climate variety, and very important, stock taking, review of the progress. See, you always know that for any kind of performance or any kind of action, you require a robust review mechanism. Now whatever governments are working towards controlling the temperature, taking action to reduce carbon emissions, that need to be again accountable, and for that review and feedback mechanism becomes very important. So in this context, global stock take, that has been taken into account here. Now when we see further this one, in terms of global stock take, Paris Agreement talks about every 5 years review process, global stock take, and the first cycle has begun now. So now coming to this, some kind of background I am giving here. That is a 1997 Kyoto Protocol, a landmark protocol was brought, a binding agreement was brought, then Paris Agreement, which I have already mentioned, 2015, then Loss and Damage Fund, very important, LND. What do you mean by Loss and Damage Fund? Those countries which are vulnerable, which are at high risk of climate change impacts, they need to be supported through a finance. That is what we call as Loss and Damage finance, that is mentioned here. Now what is key milestone in this history here, which I have already said here? Paris Agreement brought about a concept called NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution, and that every government, developing and developed, both have to, according to their national priorities, commitment which they have said how much they want to contribute, they will reduce the emissions, and they have to submit the plan how they are going to do it, which will be global stock take review of the progress made by the UN under this convention and the agreement there. Now Glasgow summit was another very important thing, because the COVID came in between, and just after COVID there was a need to again assemble together and discuss the thing here. Glasgow Pact, if you look at 2021, there were commitment made by the governments to reduce coal reserve and use of fossil fuel, because that is very important. Coal, natural gas, fossil fuel, right, that is more polluting, produce more carbon dioxide gas. That part. And Paris Agreement is a really a kind of a watermark after Kyoto got over in 2020, right, and then post 2020, that is from 2021 to 2030, that is a Paris Agreement 10 years time frame. So that becomes very significant. Now coming to the theme of the COP29, I have already mentioned, accelerating climate progress through three areas, three objectives I would say. First is innovative solutions, how we can capture carbon, reduce emission. Second, financial support, which I mentioned. Then inclusive partnership, that is partnership between governments, right? Inclusive here means that both developed countries, developing countries and least developed countries. There is a group of countries what we call as island nations. They all too should be taken together in the process to cut down the emissions, right? Sustainable pathway, that comes here. Now objectives, again, establishing a new collective quantitative goal, very important for the exam. New collective quantitative, that means measurable, right? Goal for climate finance. How much money the developed country is giving to developing countries, and there has to be a method to measure the finance utilization. One is the providing finance, second, use of the finance. So that has been now talked about. Strengthening mitigation adaptation, that is a hallmark, right? Every COP talks about mitigation, that is reducing the impacts of the climate change, adaptation to the changing environment brought by this problem, promoting technology transfer for global thing, global climate initiative and global stocktake, which I have already mentioned. Now going further, what is very, very important here, which I have mentioned, global stocktake, the collective action which is required. One is that every country, their NDC, nationally determined contribution, their review, progress. And second, all countries together, developed and developing, Annex 1, Annex, non-Annex 1. Together, what is the progress? That decides there. So now new collective, what is called here, quantitative goal, which I mentioned, is on a key element of this Paris Agreement, COP21 2015. And new financial targets were brought about that. So what was there in this one? Earlier finance was promised that $100 billion to be given to developing countries under Kyoto Protocol. Now, when Paris started, after the end of Kyoto in 2020, new finance was talked about, that was $100 billion per year, every year from 2021 to 2025. The new finance, right? So new collective action, that being discussed. Now in this context, Indian attitude towards this a new quantitative goal, that was collective quantitative goals, was that India has increased the climate financing, and India is claiming that $100 billion was not enough. Developing countries require more finance in order to fight climate change. And India is a very vulnerable country. We are facing high risk of the global warming and climate change. So that was the demand there. So India demanded the new goals to be set in trillion. $100 billion is not enough. And being a developing country, right, it becomes very, very important for India to take a stand. That the finance which is being placed by governments of industrialized countries will not be enough to take action and really go to sustainable pathway. It requires more finance. And India, right, this bargain for $100 trillion. So that was where the stalemate was there with developing countries and developed countries during this COP29 Baku Climate Change Summit. That was the part of this adaptation part of it. So now we are falling short of targets. That is another $100 billion promise, but even that has not been properly fulfilled. Even Paris Agreement talks about $100 billion per year, 2021 to 25. Now 2025 is there. Again, the finance not being mobilized so much. So reality is that target only achieved in 2022. That is again insufficient to meet actual needs. Then coming to unrealistic thing there. Proposed $300 billion annually by 2035. There's a demand there. Then again, actual need is what? 455 to 584 billion annually. And this is based on the UNFCCC Standing Committee report. This $300 billion will not be sufficient, which in COP29, right, ended with $300 billion, right, but that will not be sufficient. Even the Standing Committee of the UNFCCC Convention talking about that actual realistic figure required in terms of climate finance is $455 to $584 billion. We are falling short of finance. Then coming to this allocation to vulnerable countries. See, one is the amount of the finance. Second, allocation of finance to the countries. Like I've said, loss and damage. So here, least developed countries required $220 billion. Small island developing countries like Maldives, Fiji, right, all those kind of countries, island nations, they demanded $39 billion annually. Challenge is that no specific allocation floors have been set up. Loss and damage cost, like Global Stocktake Review 2023 says that projected $447 to $894 billion that is required per year by 2030. So again, if you look at, there is a big gap in climate finance. Big gap is there. So now for this one, India's key challenge is that, if you look at Indian key challenge is that we have insufficient amount of finance and we are not getting that support from the developed nation. Second thing is that balancing development goals with the climate target, because see, we have a huge population. Our economy needs to grow, and with the current level GDP, we need to generate employment, even our different sectors, agriculture, industry, transport, power generation, that again need to support. So India is facing a twin challenge of, one is that job, employment, growth of the sector, GDP, and second, fighting climate change, extreme heat condition, cyclonic event. We are even facing the sea level rise in Sundarban Delta. Our island like Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar Island, they are facing the problems there. Coastal areas, submergence, that is another problem could be there. Himalayan range, we have the Himalayas, the melting of glaciers that impact our river system and the aquatic bodies there, ecosystems there. So we are facing a lot of challenges in terms of global warming, climate change. But at the same time, we have a huge population, right? Urbanization, employment need, in terms of the development of social economic aspect. So we need that development also. We cannot go to backward stage there, right? So that is a twin challenge what India is right now having. So that's what India is committed to fight climate change. But we need the finance where we can spend that finance to many government schemes like electric vehicles, EVs. We have FAME India program. Now we are introducing the organic farming and all these things which government has taken there. Every sector we are trying to bring technology which can reduce emission. That requires money. And also many such critical technologies are not in India. That have to be given by the developed nation to India. Technology transfer. That again becomes very, very important. So innovative technologies, renewable energy, mitigation, adaptation part, resilient part of, and then again important youth activism. That means climate change fight need participatory approach, not only by governments, nations, but even the society and the youth can play a very important role. That is what comes here, that global movement demanding bold climate resilience, criticism of fossil fuel, influence in negotiation, that these are all things which are happening there. Now what comes here, key outcomes. Now first thing is that $300 billion US finance has been committed, which I said is not sufficient to meet the climate change goal. And again, the time frame is 2035. One is the amount is less, and again time has been extended to 2035. We need $1 trillion by 2030, next 5 years. So one of the things there. Second, carbon market. You know that you have read in your classroom program that the three forms of carbon market. One is called emission trading scheme or carbon credit system. Second called clean development mechanism, and third is joint implementation. So this mechanism which evolved in Kyoto Protocol to reduce emissions, right? That again being discussed here. Rules for Article 6. What is called Article 6 in the carbon market the framework for international carbon market under Paris Agreement, trading, carbon credits, that to finance climate action. That again was discussed during the COP29 Baku Climate Change Summit. So Carbon Market Agreement COP21, which was again discussed about that. Article 6.2 here permits bilateral agreement of carbon trading between the governments. Two countries can have agreement in terms of buying and selling of carbon units. That part of there. Article 6.4 is not expected to be operational until 2025, right, or 2026. That what is the bit said here. So carbon market, new form, new way to trade such kind of unit by capturing carbon and going one step further. That again, time frame being discussed there. Very important thing is there, and will take till 2026. Now transparency measures. How much finance? Who are getting the finance? So here there is all items concluded for monitoring climate action. Again, monitoring mechanism. Regular biennial transparency reports. Right? What is given here? BTRs. Biennial, 2 years transparency reports. That initiative, 13 countries submitted the reports. Okay, every 2 years there is a transparency report. To be very honest, telling about what actions, how much money has been spent, how many goals have been fulfilled, how much countries progressing towards their contributions, NDC, National Development Contributions. Again that one. And then Baku Declaration. You know that even whenever the COP ends, there's a document and then government declare what is called declaration. So Baku Declaration, this Global Climate Transparency Platform for Timely BTR Delivery. What is BTR? Biennial Transparency Report Delivery. That's a declaration by the governments. Adaptation Initiative, Baku Adaptation Roadmap was brought. That is a advanced adaptation under Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. Right? Support program for less developed countries who are most vulnerable right now because of the impacts of climate change. Right? So that is there should be national action plan on this. Then coming to indigenous peoples, right, of such island countries or less developed countries, even developing countries. So their local community demand Baku work plan. What is that? Renewed Facilitative Working Group, FWG, for local communities and indigenous people platform, that was launched. LCIPP was launched. Focus area, this 2025 been there, promote knowledge exchange. So sometimes traditional knowledge can also be used for fighting climate change. Our ancient old knowledge in terms of having environment friendly measures, that can be used. Now build engagement capacity, training, skill development, helping those indigenous people, right, making them aware. So diverse knowledge in climate policy. Now another very important, gender, man and woman, gender is another very key point of climate change action. Gender aspect, because the women are vulnerable, because most of the time where they stay in home with the children and the old people there, and then they may be the first kind of impactor. At the same time, women are also can be responder. Suppose in Odisha, right, cyclone event, Ganjam, Puri, those kind of area, or suppose in Sundarbans Delta, there are the people who live there, and the cyclonic event is a women there. If they are trained, their capacity building, so they can be the first responder in times of crisis, disaster, helping not only her family, children and old age people, but also other families, right, in terms of evacuation, going to a safe place. They can work with the NGOs at the same time with the government agencies. So gender becomes very, very important. So gender and climate change, Lima, there was earlier COP Lima, Peru, right? Lima work program that extended for 10 more years. That means government will give finance for gender aspect in climate change, the Lima work program, and gender integration climate policy. That means when the government make policies, any action plan to fight climate change, they should put in focus the demand of gender also, right? Women's need also there, and they should be supported by the governments. That should be there. Gender action plan launched to promote gender balance and inclusiveness. We should not think only men. We should also bring the women, their need and how they are being impacted by climate change, and what they should do, their financing to, right, become resilient. That becomes important here. So that was another very important. Then India at COP29, that leadership role, being a developing country, like Brazil, Russia, China, and all this country, what we call BRICS country. But in that country, if you look at China, India, two important developing countries. Third is Brazil, fourth is South Africa. So these all countries, their role, India is trying to play a role like a big brother, supporting developing countries' demand. So that is where you can find renewable energy kind of achievement. And you know that International Solar Alliance headquarters is in India, right? National Institute of Solar Energy, that is in Gurugram, and we are implementing more and more solar technology there, renewable energy. Then advocating equity and climate justice, always, right from COP21 2015 Paris Summit, India has been talking about equity and climate justice in terms of finance, proper allocation of finance, and helping there. There has to be climate justice, right, as given by our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi also. He has emphasized so many times on the platform that there has to be climate justice, equality, equity in terms of finance, support, technology to vulnerable countries. Then India's renewable energy push, we have now revised our target 500 gigawatt renewable energy by 2030. This is also our NDC, national determined contribution. So 500 gigawatt, solar, wind, biomass, all this one. Promoting all this, even you know that we have national hydrogen mission, green hydrogen initiative. India is trying to go into that. Then global impact of COP29, strengthening global partnership for climate action. So countries should cooperate with each other, partnership with each other. Then also meeting Paris Agreement objective. But what are roadblocks? Finance, which I said, $300 billion is not sufficient to meet all these obligations and the goals. There is more need of the finance, right? That is the first thing. Second thing, what? Commitment gap. Whatever the governments are committing and whatever governments are taking as actions, there's a gap. Emissions are increasing year by year. Warming is taking place year in year. So again, this part comes to mitigation goals there, and political challenges, resistance from high emission nation. You know that Donald Trump, right, when his first tenure of the president of that time US, the government walked out of Paris Agreement. Then Joe Biden government came. Again, the initiative was to bring to US back to the table. And you know, the America is one of the, is the biggest carbon emission there, industrialized country. But now again, Donald Trump government is back. Do you know that the attitude of the American government in terms of fighting climate change and the Paris Agreement? So again, there is a risk problem that US will not support Paris Agreement. And US in terms of economy and the emission is the highest. So that is again challenge here. That is part of the challenge comes here. So there is a resistance from the such countries like US in terms of supporting such kind of goals and the agreement, right? So that comes here. So you will take here way forward. Let's say you are writing mains answer and you have to suggest what are the measures required. The way forward, you write that we have to look into the agreed finance. Whatever they agree, they should mobilize the finance. Second thing, resilient infrastructure, and in vulnerable countries like India, wherever we are having impacts, we need to develop those resilient structures. Third is the global solidarity in climate action. Trust building. Government should trust each other and work collectively to find solutions, action plan, implement to fight climate change. Then COP29, urgency of addressing climate finance and the importance of inclusive and equitable, taking everyone together and on equality level global partnership. So if I have to tell you that two important kind of takeaway, that is, one is the finance, more finance, and second, collective partnership to address the goal and proper monitoring of those kind of goals, monitoring mechanism. So I can conclude here that COP29 is a critical step in advancing global climate action with a focus on three areas. One is sustainability, renewable energy, better clean technology and the future path. Second, innovation. We require those type of technology like carbon capture and sequestration, even like transport sector, agriculture sector to reduce the emission. And third, equity. That means in terms of finance and climate justice, that finance should be given and more finance should be given, allocated to the vulnerable countries and then proper utilization and monitoring of those kind of finance, what is called as a global stock take. That is what can be brought from this COP29. So in the mains answer writing, whatever I have discussed through this kind of slides, right, orally you should write in the answer part of it to score very good marks there. Now prelims exam will be question where the statements will be given, and COP29 whatever is the very important. Now we have covered in our monthly magazine, even IAS gadget of Aptiplus monthly magazine. You can go to the website IAS Gyan of Aptiplus. All things are given there, and you can follow the same topic there, because this is one of the area where question can be asked in the prelims exam as well there. So Aptiplus content team and the entire thing which has brought things of here are very important, and this will really help you prepare better and revise for your coming exam. So I really appreciate, right, of all of you who are watching right now, and I thank Aptiplus for asking me to take this session there. Now key concept, the static part, the theory part, you are most welcome to connect back to us, and as a teacher of environment I discuss all these concepts in detail in the classroom program. So you can even inquire for our general foundation program also there. So I will be looking forward to meet and interact all of you, and for any query and any kind of thing, please visit our website and remain connected with us. So thank you all, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.